Welcome, everyone. I'm Danielle Calcagney. I'm the social media manager at the New Jersey DOT and TransComm's Professional Development Subcommittee Chair. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, our webinar is entitled Tried and True Messaging That Works for Transportation Communicators, which will feature 3 great speakers with a lot of knowledge and experience on this topic, but more on our presenters in a moment. Today's webinar is part of AASHTO's Committee on Transportation Communications, or TransComm's, mission to facilitate the sharing of best practices among state DOTs. The membership of this committee is comprised of the top communication officials from each of the 52 AASHTO member departments. Among other activities, TransComm hosts an annual meeting that focuses on best practices, state-to-state collaboration, and professional development. We're currently in the process of signing the contract for the 2024 meeting, and we'll be able to share the date and location with you soon. So exciting news coming up about that. These webinars are open to anyone and everyone, so please feel free to share information on the series with friends and colleagues. The presentation will be recorded and uploaded to the TransComm website, which is communications.transportation.org. And there you can learn about TransComm's regular webinars, series, and general TransComm information. Now, to talk about today's webinar builds on a session we had at our annual meeting last fall in Portland, Maine. Communicating the benefits of transportation to the general public is a constant challenge. And now, halfway through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which provided historic level federal investment in surface transportation across the country, it is more important than ever for us to for us as communications professionals to talk about what our state DOT projects are doing to better our communities, especially if we don't want this to be a once-in-a-lifetime investment. This session will focus on an NCHRP report, assessing and communicating the economic and quality of life benefits of transportation infrastructure investment, and will give concrete examples of messages that resonate with the public and why they're effective. Our speakers will also give attendees practical examples of how to use those effective messages within their day-to-day communications plan. Before we get started, a few things to keep in mind. First, we will have a Q&A at the end. Please type your questions into the chat, or you can raise your hand after all presentations are done, and we will unmute you. Today's speakers are going to cover quite a bit of ground, but rest assured we have planned a robust question and answer session, and we hope to get your questions, get to as many questions as we can when the presentations are finished. So I would like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker for today is Shane Peck. Shane is the Senior Vice President and Communications and Public Involvement Director with WSP, a global professional services company. He has 30 years of experience in the leadership and practice of communications public involvement. He was a project manager for the recently completed NCHRP project that we're going to discuss today. So welcome, Shane. And then next, oh, I'm sorry, Shane, I cut you off. Welcome, Shane.
Go ahead. I didn't know if you were going to introduce everybody or us individually.
I guess we'll go through everybody, and then we'll open up to you after. Our next speaker is Guy Tridgell. Guy has worked both sides of the proverbial fence in transportation communications for more than 20 years, including 2 stints at the Illinois DOT. Since 2016, he has served as the agency's Director of Communications. He first started at IDOT in 2010 as the Public Information Officer in the Chicago area. He left the agency briefly to become Communications Director for U.S. Congressman, who served as the senior member from Illinois on House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. He got a start as a longtime transportation reporter for daily newspapers in Chicago. And last but not least, we welcome Elizabeth McMillan. She is the Director of Communication for the Utah DOT. She has worked in the transportation industry for 13 years with experience in positions ranging from public involvement to policy and legislation. She believes that government can be a positive institution with the opportunity to systemically improve well-being in communities. Elizabeth has earned a Master of Applied Positive Psychology at University of Pennsylvania, where she studied the relationship between quality of life and transportation for her capstone project. Using the principles of positive psychology, she seeks to grow the good, both internally at UDOT and in Utah's communities. So welcome, speakers. Thank you for being here. And we will kick it off with Shane. So Shane, take it away.
Thanks, Danielle. I will share my screen here and switch over to slideshow. There we go. I also need to share my sound because I'm going to have some videos later. All right. So I do want to put in a plug here for NCHRP panels. Guy was on the panel for the research we're going to talk about today, and Elizabeth was a real driving force and part of the panel. I think maybe even the chair of the panel that we did for the research previous to this that was a direct precursor to this one. And I think they would agree that there's a lot of value in the panels and it's not a real heavy lift. And from what I hear, TRB could really use some volunteers. So you can go on the TRB website, indicate what kind of projects you'd be interested in being involved in this case, communications or public involvement or whatever your interest area is. And they will keep you in the pool of folks to be on future panels for future research. As I mentioned, this is a direct follow-up on research we did previously on communicating the economic and quality of life benefits of transportation investment. Previously, we identified the messages with this current or the recently completed research that we're talking about today. We took those messages, put them in a real world context that would be typical for a state DOT, and we tested those messages in that context. But this messaging research and other research into communications, the ones on the screen are just primarily the ones I've been involved with. You can see these date back a long way, and we have identified a lot of trends over the years that have led to where we are right now. So these are the 5 messages we identified that really resonate with the public, and these are the ones that we took out, and I'll talk a little bit about how we did that. So I'm not going to talk to each of these right now. I will speak to each of them individually and kind of talk about what we learned. But these are the messages that we put in front of folks to find out how they resonated with people and what was the best context for those. So real quick, a few do's and don'ts of, it's not just the message, it's the method and the context. I will likely say that several times today. Context matters. So even if you have great messages, the context you put them in, and that's what this whole thing was about. And you'll see how the different messages kind of played differently depending on whether it was a still image or a video. And so definitely leading with the positive, we found any negative imagery or negative messaging up front, such as traffic, kind of put people in the wrong mindset kind of right out of the gate. And even if your overall message is positive and compelling, that can kind of turn people off to start with. Also, a big takeaway is the need to be pretty literal and direct with your communications. And that particularly applies when talking about jobs. Folks see job creation and transportation as the construction workers they see out on the roadways. And you really have to make a direct appeal and a direct communications and getting them to understand the bigger benefits of how transportation can create jobs. So how we tested these messages, we used a online focus group tool called Brightboards. These are online focus groups. People could join them over a 3-day period. We did 2 different rounds of these in July and September 2022. People could go on at their leisure. That would alert a moderator that they were on there. And then they viewed the materials that we put together, which I will show you here in a minute. We made sure that we had a audience that was distributed across urban, suburban, and rural areas. And we also used AASHTO's regions, having 6 to 7 people from each of the AASHTO regions to make sure we were getting a nationwide group of folks participating. And then also we had all the key demographics represented based on census data. So this was one of the messages and materials that folks saw. We put the messages in kind of social media friendly formats such as this one. So a still image with text on the screen that could be shared, something that I see on Facebook or Instagram. When people would visit the online focus groups, they would see this. They had an opportunity to put emojis directly on this image to show what they liked or didn't like. They could add comments and also interact with the moderator if the moderator wanted to further drill down a little bit into something they said. So let me change my view here real quick. So this is what we heard about the image that you just saw that had the accompanying text. This was the theme equity. So the theme of equity, obviously, people see as important, but again, it's not the word equity as much of how you say it to people. And the message that transportation is for everyone and it improves all of our lives was highly resonant. You can see across the top of this table, that's the overall likability from 1 to 10, 1 being didn't like it at all, to 10 being I completely liked it. See, it played well across all locations. Urban highest, but also did well in suburban and rural areas. It also, if you look at some of these other things, people could respond to these statements down the left side on a scale of 1 to 10. And you will see that all the messages were received positively for the most part, rating higher than 5, and usually in 7, 8, 9. And that's not surprising since we've been developing these messages with a lot of research and the previous research and over a lot of time. So we knew they were positive. We were just judging them on how positive they are and how they did within certain communications tools and methods. On the very bottom, you can see how it scored really highly. This concept reminds me that investing in transportation infrastructure makes life better for everyone. And again, not surprising because that is literally what we said. So that's another where being very direct with your communications, people will hear that message. We also put these messages in videos. So what you see on the screen is the actual script to the video on the left, and then I will play the video and hopefully you can hear it. If you can't, Maggie or somebody, please let me know.
Everyone needs reliable, safe, and affordable transportation. Whether you drive, take the bus, or use another way to get around, being able to go where you need to, when you need to, is vital to your daily life. Better transportation means more time for the things that count. Transportation that works for everyone improves all our lives. Better transportation is for everyone.
So when people visited the online focus groups, they also viewed those videos. They could also, in the videos, put emojis anywhere along the way and indicate what they liked or didn't and comment on those as well. One thing I wanted to mention is the videos and the images were created for testing purposes as part of the research. They weren't meant to be something that we could hand over or make available to state DOTs. They're available for you to look at and replicate and take lessons from, but they weren't meant to just be, here's a tool that then you can take out and put your logo on and use. They also weren't really meant to be advertisements. They can kind of come across that way, but it was really trying to put all of our messaging in that context and see how people reacted to each of the messages. This was a case where having it in a video format helped to provide greater explanation and a little more fully talk about equity. The previous message, people really responded well to the wheelchair and had a lot of empathy there. In this case, I think people understood and again, put that message across that equity, that transportation improves everyone's lives and is for everyone. So the next one we looked at was mobility. And this is what people saw when they went online. This image and this text, improving transportation means you can get where you need to go quickly and easily. And that is the main message that over many years of research we have identified as being what people front of mind, that's what they think of when it comes to transportation is, can I get where I need to go? This is one of those cases where just the image of traffic pretty much put people in a mindset, a negative mindset. Again, you can see people overall reacted favorably to it, but not as high as in some other methods. The darker the orange in the table, the higher people rated it as far as agreeing that they really liked it. It did, though, kind of get the key message across, reducing traffic jams, making commuting easier. But again, the traffic, even though it's free-flowing traffic and it's a beautiful day and the highway's in great shape, it just puts people in a negative mindset. They don't like thinking about being in traffic in any regard. So let's take a look at this one.
The ability to easily get to work, shopping, school, doctor's appointments, and other destinations is important to your daily life. Improving transportation means you can get where you need to go more quickly and more easily. Access to reliable transportation means job security, healthier families, and more time for what really matters. Improved transportation makes life better.
Again, this one, you can see how putting it in a video really improved people's understanding, getting away from that still image of traffic, showing real people, families, other folks, being able to get where they need to go, and further explaining why transportation improves your life overall, makes things easier, improves your mobility. One of the aspects of all of these messaging research projects, and this one, is to help compel people to support further investment in transportation. And so one of the key responses we looked at, and including on this one, I found this concept to be very compelling and persuasive. This video scored the highest in that regard, very highly with urban area folks, less highly with rural area, but overall scored an 8 in that category. This is the easier commutes. So again, folks saw this image, more reliable transportation makes your commute less stressful. This is another one where the image was not, people didn't see the connection, like how is this making, how are we demonstrating reliability with the message? They liked the gentleman that's in the picture. They liked that it looked like an empty, or that he has room, they can get where he needs to go, that kind of stuff. They just didn't think that it really made the point of, well, this makes my commute more reliable. So how is that getting across with this image? Here's the video version.
Easier commutes means less time going to and from work, helping ensure job security, reducing stress, and getting you back to the important things in life. Transportation improvements that reduce traffic jams and make buses and trains more reliable mean you get where you need to be with fewer hassles. Better transportation means easier commutes.
People love the dogs, by the way. We doubled down on the dogs there. Saw a big peak in positive when the dog came on the screen. So again, you can see, put it in a video, provide more context, provide a lot more images and a lot more explanation how transportation can improve commutes and improve people's lives. You can see it again scored very highly across all of these categories. Obviously, urban scored off the charts, suburban well, rural not as well, but still positively. So this is one about time, which isn't always something that we communicate to people, but what we've found people think about is saving time, not wasting time. So time spent in traffic is time away from the important things in life. So we're trying to show the important things instead of the traffic with this image. Again, scored well in urban areas, mentioning traffic. I think that's a big thing. Bigger in urban areas, less of a concern in rural. a concern in suburban. The commute messaging, to go back to that, played well in suburban, which again is not surprising because a lot of people live in suburban areas, commute to work. Here's the video related to time.
Time spent sitting in traffic is time away from the important things in life. Investing in improvements that reduce traffic jams gives you more time in your day by helping you get where you need to go more quickly with fewer hassles. Better transportation means time for what matters. Time for work, time for family, and time for yourself.
So I keep going back to this. The videos, fleshing it out more in the video, providing more information. This one scored the highest of scoring high in the urban areas. This one scored the highest out of all of them in the urban areas, but you can also see it scored high with suburban folks and higher with rural folks. Concept reminds me that investing in transportation plays an important part in the health and well-being of families. That was kind of one of our key things. And then obviously makes transportation better for everyone and makes, and this concept shows or talks about things that are important to me personally. So that's a key thing too, is we always talk about trying to make the appeals personal. Now with jobs, when we did 2 rounds, like I said, we did 2 rounds, we had a different image for jobs, which was basically what looked like a restaurant manager kind of standing at the doorway of a restaurant, and people really did not know what the connection with transportation was. So this is one of the key examples of being very literal. It's like, so you mainly think of jobs being the construction workers. So here are construction workers buying food from folks in the community. So you're seeing how there's that kind of ripple effect from the investment in transportation that helps folks locally and creates jobs locally. So this one played well. Again, the images didn't score as high as the videos, but you can see the overall likability people liked. And we're trying to get the concept across that creating jobs. So that's where it scored the highest. This concept reminds me that investing in transportation creates jobs and a more vibrant economy. And it's interesting on this one, lower in urban areas, very high in suburban, and pretty high in rural. So here's the jobs video.
Good jobs are key to a thriving lifestyle, a vibrant economy, and the well-being of our families. Investing in transportation creates not only construction jobs, but jobs in local restaurants, stores, offices, and all the other businesses that support a thriving community. Access to reliable transportation means more job security, healthier families, and more time for the things you really enjoy.
And seeing that older couple at the end, one of the things we found with showing elderly folks is people want to see them doing something besides being old. A lot of times we kind of default to that. Here's somebody in a wheelchair that needs to be helped. Showing older folks that are out enjoying life and being vibrant is a good positive image and message. And this is something I've found over the years too, in this research and otherwise. Jobs really resonate in urban areas, particularly urban core areas. It's not hard to make the connection between transportation and jobs in core areas because that's front of mind in regard to everything. And so you can see the jobs messaging doesn't resonate as much suburban or rural, but resonates really high urban. So again, these were the messages we tested and that resonated most with folks. All of these materials are available to you on transportation.org and through NCHRP and TRB. And obviously, if you'd like to chat with me, I'm going to go over this one. That's a lot of information. But if you'd like to contact me directly, I'm happy to visit with anyone, or you can contact Maggie or anyone with the AASHTO. So I will pass it back to Danielle.
Great. Thank you, Shane. Now we are going to switch over to Guy, who is going to share how Illinois DOT was able to use this information in their communications office.
Sure. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Shane. So we were lucky here at IDOT, the National Cooperative Highway Research Program study that Shane just walked you through was happening right about the same time that IDOT was embarking on its next long-range transportation plan. And just a little background on that, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a long-range planning document, looks about 20 to 30 years out, guides decision-making, policy-making at the department. Very forward-thinking, very planning-centric, fairly dry. In other words, just very much a government document and study. Past efforts to publicize and perform outreach were not terribly exciting. Assortment of public meetings at libraries, government buildings, some online surveys. I'm sure most of you are kind of familiar with that approach. Typical audience that we reached were local governments, advocacy groups, planning organizations, sort of your typical players that you see at DOT public meetings. But for this effort, we were lucky to receive a little bit of funding from our Office of Planning and Programming to help them reimagine where they wanted to go with this effort. The direction that we were given is that they wanted something that would help drive more engagement, more meaningful engagement, excite people in transportation in ways that really hadn't been done much before previously here, and just get the department thinking overall about new ways how to message quality of life impacts on our projects. So where we landed was doing some long form videos that we wanted to be able to play on a variety of formats and settings, not just social media or on IDOT platforms, but things that we could share with stakeholders, shown in our facilities, shown at public meetings. If needed, we wanted to be able to chunk them up and use in shorter formats. We wanted something very bright, positive, showing people using our system successfully. So the timing was good for our plan and the study, because the plan had almost the exact same 5 pillars as the research that we were working on. One was mobility, economy, resiliency, stewardship, and leadership, and stewardship and livability. Sorry. We were lucky here to have leadership at the time that really wanted us to kind of get off the highway when we were talking about projects, and a secretary in particular who had emphasized us finding ways to talk about the benefits of projects, not immediately afterwards, but perhaps 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 years out. It was really a bit of a shift from how we had done things before. So what we settled on was picking 3 projects to profile. What we wanted to do was pick some that were a little under the radar, not very splashy. They weren't huge dollar amounts, but very relatable and impactful in the areas where they were. We wanted to pick ones that were in areas that were historically maybe a little bit tough for us to reach, either for geographic reasons or otherwise. It wasn't necessarily a component of the strategy, but we saw this as an opportunity maybe to break down some barriers and connect with people in locations where we really hadn't worked like this previously. And lastly, we wanted others to kind of tell our story. We wanted not just IDOT out there talking about it, but the people who are impacted by our projects. We thought it was a much more authentic approach and could probably build some excitement overall with what we were doing. So the 3 that we settled on was, one was the state corridor in Rockford, Illinois, an area that hadn't really seen much investment and struggled with issues with blight over the years. The IDOT facilities in that area, the roads and the infrastructure just looked old and tired. Over several years, the department worked to remake it, generate some economic development and investment, really driven by a desire to connect a major healthcare provider in that area to a neighborhood that had felt pretty detached from it over the years. Another one we settled on was a collaboration with the University of Illinois, local transit providers in the area, and the cities of Champaign, Urbana. Again, another one where streets around the campus were under state jurisdiction, but they were very, very busy, hectic places filled with traffic, and just generally very stressful places to be. And again, over several years, the department worked with local partners to make the area more accessible for people who bike and walk, and just generally more enjoyable when you're trying to get around the state's signature campus. Lastly, we visited far southern Illinois for a project called the Crab Orchard Greenway. This was a vision of multiple towns to create a new transportation option in an area that's, again, defined by a very busy state highway. There's a lot of local resources in the area, a local community college, a large nature preserve, but you couldn't really get to them or connect with them in any kind of safe way unless you were in a car. So I wanted to share with you a piece of that last project. I won't show you the whole thing, but I'm gonna share a clip for you now. And Maggie, let me know if there's issues here.
The transportation challenges associated with Route 13 is the high-speed traffic. We have a lot of people that use motorized wheelchairs and a lot of students that use bicycles or walk to the amenities. We needed a separate use path to improve safety, improve access, improve quality of life for bikes and pedestrians.
We really started to look at what are other ways that we can partner with IDOT to meet transportation needs for the citizens in Southern Illinois that don't immediately focus on vehicles. And our goal was to fulfill a vision of having a long-range multi-use pathway that would be a source of recreation as well as economic development for Williamson County and all of Southern Illinois. Crab Orchard Greenway project in total will connect Carbondale to Marion. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for the citizens of Southern Illinois to reach one end of Williamson County to the other end of Jackson County.
So that, again, that was just a piece of what, you know, of 3 videos we put together, all very similar on that. Sean Marchenke on our staff was instrumental in pulling these together. I know he's been active in ASHO, and some of you probably know. So we're still in the middle of our long-range transportation planning process, but we have seen more planned engagement. It upped our online engagement. Helped us with meetings in areas where we really hadn't been before, places where people truly gather, like farmers markets and things like that. We want to start doing more of these. We believe it's the start of something of how we discuss how transportation and quality of life are truly interwoven. In some ways, and I've said this before, this really felt like an exercise in marketing. How transportation is improving your life and the life of your friends and neighbors and family. I know a lot of people and work with a lot of people in transit where marketing is a big part of what they do, constantly promoting time savings, cost savings, less stress if you use their product. But at the DOT level, we just had not done as much of that, and it felt very similar. So going through this took a lot of time, but it did provide us, I think, a good starting point just to start talking about transportation differently in different areas. And a reminder that, you know, we are pretty skilled here at breaking down projects and what it takes to deliver projects. But, you know, it brought us back to the reminder that, you know, we should always be shooting for describing why these projects are happening. So this research, in my view, truly got us thinking about talking about projects differently and understanding across the department that really transportation is for everyone. And just a plug for the research. If you do have an opportunity to take part in something like this through Transportation Research Board or maybe some other vehicle, I really encourage anyone to take advantage of it. It was a really good opportunity for us to just kind of step back, examine what we're doing. And in this case, it was real work. I mean, we could apply what we were doing with the research to something that was happening at the department right here and right now. So the timing was great, and we had a lot of great takeaways from it. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Danielle.
Awesome. Thank you, Guy. Just a quick reminder, if anybody has any questions for any of our speakers today, the chat box is now open. This is our first time using Zoom, so appreciate everybody's patience as we work out any of our kinks. But I'm going to now turn it over to Elizabeth from Utah.
Thank you. So quick story. Shane mentioned that I was part of the group that did the original round of research for the NCHRP study, and that was in 2018, which was concurrent with me getting my degree that Danielle mentioned in my bio. And so I was looking at quality of life and the relationship with transportation. And then also there was legislation that passed that year that required the DOT to lead a coordinated effort to come up with statewide transportation initiatives, strategic initiatives. And so we decided to do that as a totally collaborative process, and we were really inclusive in who we invited. So we had a big group, and we decided, instead of telling everyone, here's the outcome we're going to try to get to, now let's come up with a plan together, that we were going to come in and say, what do we all think the outcome should be, and what should we focus on, and just take a little bit of a different approach from what we would normally do. So in that very first meeting, people were excited to be there. We had Department of Health, Department of Education, and then our usual lineup of partners from transit, the MPOs, and economic development. And there was buzz in the room. People were ready to get started. And before we were even through our slide deck of conversation starters, somebody mentioned that there was a perception that quality of life was declining in Utah because we have been the fastest growing state over the past 10 years. And so it's just changed a lot. And as humans, we don't necessarily love change. And so there's a little bit of a negative reaction, and the reaction of things are changing is my quality of life is going down. And everybody grabbed onto that. And it was just this energy in the room, and everybody had a story to tell about quality of life. And so the person who was leading this process said, it sounds like we should focus on quality of life. And so we didn't need to do a whole bunch of work after that, because it was very clear that we were all on the same page, that that's what we were going to do. So it was very serendipitous that that is how things progressed. And because we had so many people who were in the room, so many different partners who were there, who felt like they were participants in deciding that that's what we should focus on, they've continued to be really good partners in telling stories and putting out the message that everything that we do is for quality of life. So flash forward, this is from last year. So because we're growing so much, there are some very formal approaches for us to talk with citizens of Utah about how we want to grow and the realities of growth. And so this Guiding Our Growth program is one of those. And it was led by a different partner group, but they were folks who were part of that original round of quality of life messaging. And so they were very true to that. And they included us and our transit partners in everything that we did. So I just want to share one thing that they did was videos. So they were working on telling quality of life stories. This is Carlos Braceres. He's my boss. He's the executive director at UDOT. And so in this video, he tells a story about coming to live in Utah. He came here thinking that he would be here for one ski season because he loved to ski, and he stayed here. He's been here for 43 years now, because he loves living in Utah. And then he talks about having access to the places where he likes to ski, and access is frankly not as good now because there's so much traffic. And so we've got a big EIS and a planned project to improve access. So he's telling a very personal story. And some of the people that also did videos over there on the left are our governor, our lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate. So there are lots of what I call fancy folks who were talking about their personal experiences or sharing messages about the relationship between growth and specifically transportation and quality of life. It was something that just organically came up a lot without us having to push for it being transportation related messaging. You can also see here, this is on the website. And so I just highlighted, this is just from a little portion of one page where quality of life is mentioned twice. So really great commitment to messaging around quality of life. But I had some lessons learned to take away from that. So one of them was, it was really great for us to invest the time getting everybody on the same page about what stories we wanted to tell when it comes to growth in Utah, and specifically how that relates to transportation. I mentioned we were just kind of lucky that we had everybody in the same room at the right time to have that conversation. And then we also had people who understand the value of communication. So we literally have messaging documents that say, these are the messages we're trying to hit. These are the types of language that we want to use. One thing that I will say that if I were to give us a grade, I would say we maybe got a B on this one, is not because we didn't get everybody saying the same message, but it's because we were talking about quality of life, not the things that create quality of life. So Carlos organically did that in his video. He talked about what it meant to him. But a lot of the communication that we put out is like what I showed you from that web page, where it's just referencing quality of life. And that's not necessarily something that people grab onto and they're like, yes, that resonates with me. I know what that means. They intellectually understand that there's a relationship and that we're thinking about their lives, but it is not the same as some of the things that Shane talked about, the way to tell messages and the way to focus on different parts of people's lives that matter to them. So I just mentioned that because I feel like we overshot the mark on fidelity of messaging without pausing and saying, are we telling this message in the right way? I also think that it's communication 101, adapting the messaging based on the audience. And when I think about the reels that were on Instagram, they were on YouTube as well, that was a general Instagram account. And so to have the fancy folks, in hindsight, I think we probably should have done more stories with just people who experience the transportation system. I like our governor. I ultimately work for the governor. He's my boss's boss. And what he says is not the same to me as what somebody who lives in my city says about what it's like to drive on I-15 in our area. And so just remembering it's fine. It's great to get a mix of governors and lieutenant governors, as long as you remember to mix in people, especially when the audience was general public. Had this been something for legislators or constituents or city or county councils or commissions, it might have been the exact right way to go. But for our general audience, we probably should have been more diverse in the carriers of the message. And finally, just to underscore, especially what Shane talked about, and Guy also talked about it, but hooking the audience with resonant packaging, meaning kids, pictures of dogs, people that are experiencing positive emotions, showing that, because we automatically grab onto that. We want to look at it. We want to hear what the message is when we see that. So now I'm going to share an example of something that I think we did better. This is a project that was in the fastest growing city in Utah. It's a small city though, and so that's part of why they're growing so fast. But they're in the position of being able to decide who they want to be when they grow up, and the people who are there who are making those decisions have been partners with transportation professionals all along and with our NPOs. So they understand the value of transportation. And as they've been selling their city and saying, come live here, it's going to be a great place to live, transportation has been central to their messaging. Also, I threw it on there, but this was an America's Transportation Award winner, which I'm really pleased and excited about because it was a great project, is a great project. Again, so many of the same people who were with us at the table for that original strategic initiative development were also part of putting together this project. So you can see we had representatives from those different partners breaking ground with the not at all stereotypical literal groundbreaking with shovels. But because we had those same people, we were able to once again be more unified in our messaging than we would have otherwise. And I think we did better on the messaging. So these are a couple of examples of quotes that were included in stories in local media. It's so much better when all of the messaging is not coming from us. It's not coming from UDOT talking about how great UDOT projects are and how important transportation is. It means more, it sounds more authentic when it's coming from others. So you can see that their city mayor made comments about connecting people regionally, connecting them to jobs, to higher education, and what that means for their city. And then you also can see the developer who worked on this project, and they talk about connecting people to lakes and mountains. Outdoor recreation is a huge part of our culture here in Utah. And so for people to be able to have access to that and not feel like they're going to be stuck in traffic trying to get up to a ski resort means a lot to them. A walkable lifestyle is something that is appealing to the types of people that Vineyard City is trying to attract. So that is mentioned. And then also this project ultimately was intended to connect people to transit, which is something that there's not a ton of access to outside of the Salt Lake City metro area, especially here where it's a growing but less developed area. That's something though that people want. So very sellable. All right, so now I will talk about the practical approach to this, and I'll move quickly because I want to be able to get to questions. Every other month though, we come together with UDOT's communications team and then the consultants who do work for us. And we've got a big consultant team who are just extended family of UDOT. And we talk about our approach to things, guidelines, any new information that they need to have. We put together last year a voice and writing guide. And in it, we include specific examples of what we want people to do and also specific explanations of how we want people to communicate. And this, I think, is just a very concise way of explaining it, which is, how would I explain this to a friend over coffee? Or sometimes I say, if you ran into a neighbor at the store and they asked you a question, how would you explain it to them? So keeping that conversational tone for most of what we do is our goal. So explaining the benefits, we're spelling it out here, everything that we've been talking about, spelling it out here so that there's no confusion about the expectation for what our communications should sound like and what they should focus on. And this seems like it's not a glamorous thing and maybe doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but when you think about when you started your job, anywhere that you could get guidance, that you understood exactly what success looked like and exactly what your client or your boss wanted from you, having something like this is gold. And it also gives us something to point back to when there's something that comes out and we're feeling like it's not exactly what we wanted, to say, okay, come back to this. We've been clear. This is the expectation. Try it again. And then these are just some side by side. So this is an older post of ours. And this, I would say, is indicative of the type of communications we did for 10, 20, 30 years. It's an upgrade though, at least it's on social media and it's short. And then this is an improved version. So in the style guide that I mentioned, we gave this as the example of what's better. It's more plain language. It specifically references safety, which is the benefit. All right, now coming back to guiding our growth, I know that I said I would give us like a B on that, but simultaneous to that was the development of what we call the unified plan. So all of the MPOs and the counties pull together their long-range plans, and then we do rural long-range planning, and we put all of it together in a coordinated plan rather than having them all be separate. And something that we update every 5 years. So in this most recent update, we included real stories from real people that related to different elements of quality of life. So this is Norval over on the side. Norval is not an actor. That is definitely not a stock photo. He's a truck driver who lives in Utah, and he tells his story about how transportation has affected his life, his job personally, and what it means for the economy. And so this was, to me, a real win because it was the same group of people who we felt like we had not nailed it when we were just saying quality of life and not saying what that meant. This was the next project. And so I think we did a better job on that. All right, and then I'm going to try to play a video. When we tried it in practice, half could hear it and half could not. So I'll include the link in the chat if it doesn't work. I love that video. And that's one where I just felt like my team did a great job. We had dogs, we had cute kids, we had people who were together and they were happy. They were outside being active. You can see the Utah mountains, which is like iconic Utah. We had balloons, we had a little donkey, like we had everything. We had everything that would make you want to watch a video and feel the feels. The music was really great. So this to me is an excellent example of doing well on the packaging. And then we had the messaging too, and we talked about connecting communities, the ability to enjoy outdoor recreation with paths. And this was a video in a long series of communications about the benefits of this project. And we really did focus on how this would benefit people individually. I wanted to share this because to me, this was the real show that we had been successful. So you saw what the video was, and I just told you that it was building on messaging that we had been doing for a long time. Seeing people say our messaging back to us, that was really gratifying. Like that told me that we had done what we meant to. They're talking about less stress, that it improved their commute, that projects are about people, not roads. So you've seen our journey. It's still not perfect, but I just want to remind everyone that if you are feeling discouraged by every single thing you put out not being perfect, we are all in this together. And as long as we're moving the right direction, we're getting some things right.
That was great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I saw that video too when you guys posted it, and it was just so moving. I almost even teared up. It was just so well done. Awesome. Well, thank you so much to all of our presenters. We have a few minutes. I hope that's not me, my headset being scratchy, but we have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you still have a couple minutes to put your question in the chat if you want, or you can raise your hand and Maggie can go in and unmute you. But we did get one question in the chat from Sean Quinn, and it was a question for Elizabeth. Did you notice a drop in engagement when UDOT had to forego TikTok?
This is so painful, losing TikTok. There was a lack of engagement among our team because we were all really depressed. But as far as engagement from the public, we took a minute to regroup and then we moved over to Instagram, and no, we did not see a lack of engagement. Our engagement on Instagram has been better than we ever did on TikTok. I don't know where we would have been if we had stayed on TikTok, but we have had great engagement on Instagram. Our reels do well. Everything that we've done has done well, and we have an amazing team, so credit to them. But no, we did not see things fall apart. I'm really glad to say.
Great. Thank you. Let's see, did anybody have their hands up? I actually cannot see.
I see Tiffany McCall. I sent you a chat. I don't know if that was just telling me before that the chat wasn't working or if you have a question now, but I didn't want to lower your hand if you did have a question. I don't want to hit allow you to talk if you are good. And I don't want to unmute you on purpose if you don't need to be unmuted or want to be unmuted.
I am guessing that she is not. She's good.
Oh,
okay.
she's good.
Awesome.
I do think it's interesting there's some conversation in the chat about dogs. And I think I don't know that's anything, anybody wants to comment on with this, because I definitely understand the perspectives here. So many of us think dogs are cute and the best, and they attract a ton. Pets typically attract a lot of attention on social. But I think it is interesting to keep in mind that for different populations and different folks, to keep this in mind when you're working on your messaging. So thank you for bringing that up. I have a question, if that's okay. I'll go on camera here. Shane, the research that was done has been ongoing, like you mentioned, for quite a long time. Lots of different stages, lots of input from TransComm too, in the beginning stages of it. What do you think the biggest challenges in tackling a report like this? Because it seems like there's a lot that could be included, a lot we could miss, a lot of areas of focus. So what kind of helped frame what you wanted to capture and how you went about it.
I think the reason we've had, more than one research project in this area is because of those challenges but the good thing is that as we've done these dating all the way back to like 2010, WSP was involved with one on transportation messaging. There is kind of a thread that runs through it. So we kind of get reconfirmed on what those resonant messages are. The mobility message, that's why you see mobility, the word mobility used a lot in a lot of DOT communications, is because of this research. My point again is always, it's not the word mobility so much as the concept of mobility. So you need, because most people don't really use the word mobility in their kind of common vernacular. It's, can I get where I need to go, with quickly and with a limited amount of hassles. And then safety is kind of assumed by most people. It's not assumed by DOTs. It's the most important thing, but that's why people take safety a little bit for granted, because they see the system as generally safe. They're more concerned about the other people using the system, not of being irresponsible or whatever. So mobility's kind of been a through line. Equity was something that came up between the previous research and this one, because it was completed in early 2020. Then there was pandemic and the George Floyd and other things that happened, and equity came to the forefront for a lot of DOTs. So that was one of the things we were tasked with, was what, if anything, has happened since the last research that we should be looking at as far as messaging, and equity was a big one. And we were really pleased to learn that that message of transportation is for everyone, appeals to everyone, because you can kind of define that how you want. And so, yes, everybody should have access to transportation, whatever your viewpoint is that you're coming at that from.
Great. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Maggie, for that excellent question. We are well, it's 3 o'clock my time, so we are at the hour mark. I see that there is another question in the chat. So I believe it's for Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind actually just answering that in the chat or reaching out to Erica, that'd be great. That is going to wrap it up for today's webinar. If we didn't get to your question, again, please feel free to reach out to our panelists. I'm going to ask all the panelists to please put your contact information, your email in the chat. That would be very helpful. Today's webinar has been recorded, and we'll post a link in the TransComm website. And I believe Maggie sent out a different website link than what I have. So that should be in the chat as well.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. I gave you the wrong address. We have a new website. AASHTO has a new website. So it's transportation.org/communications. Sorry. And I did put, can you all see the presenter emails up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Great. And we'll have some more information on the March edition of the TransComm webinar series soon. So be sure to look out for an email announcement or check back at the TransComm website for that. And on behalf of TransComm, I want to thank again today's presenters. That was a fantastic presentation, and I certainly learned a lot. And I also want to thank each of you for tuning in and contributing to the session. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.